Every day, I dreaded checking my mailbox. It was a small act, just a few steps down the hall or out to the curb, but it felt like approaching a wild animal. My heart would pound as I reached for the handle, already bracing myself for what I'd find inside. Instead of friendly letters or postcards, I found bills and collection notices, reminders of the financial mess I was in. Each envelope seemed heavier than the last, stamped with warnings and threats, as if the paper itself was judging me for letting things get so bad. I tossed the stack onto my kitchen counter, unopened, letting the pile grow into a mountain. It was easier to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't there, than to face the reality of what those envelopes contained. But every day, the pile grew taller, more impossible to ignore. It became a monster in my apartment, a constant source of anxiety. No matter where I went, I could feel its presence, looming, threatening, impossible to escape. The clutter took over my space and the stress took over my mind. I avoided it at all costs, making coffee with my back turned, eating standing up so I wouldn't have to look at the pile. I'd find excuses to leave the kitchen quickly, pretending I was too busy to deal with it, but really, I was just scared. The fear of what was inside those envelopes kept me up at night. I'd lie awake, replaying worst-case scenarios in my mind, wondering how much deeper I could sink before everything fell apart. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. I imagined losing my apartment, my car, even my paycheck. The thought of eviction or repossession haunted me, and I'd picture myself packing up my life into boxes, not knowing where I'd go next. The fear was paralyzing. Outwardly, I looked fine, but inside, I was falling apart. I put on a brave face for friends and co-workers, pretending everything was normal, but the truth was, I was barely holding it together. The shame and isolation were overwhelming. The weight of debt was crushing, and I felt trapped. It was like being buried alive, with no one to call for help. Every day, the pressure grew, and I wondered if I'd ever find a way out. That pile of mail wasn't just paper. It was proof I'd lost control. Each envelope was a reminder of mistakes I couldn't undo and responsibilities I couldn't meet. It felt like my failures were on display for the world to see. I honestly believed there was no way out. The mountain of mail became a symbol of everything I feared: failure, loss, and the belief that I was completely alone in my struggle. My name is Alex, and for a long time, I felt like I was barely keeping my head above water. I want to share my story, because maybe you'll see a bit of yourself in it, or maybe you'll just understand what it's like to feel completely overwhelmed by money. Just a few years ago, my finances were an absolute disaster. Every time I opened my mailbox, I braced myself for another bill or late notice. I felt like I was always one step away from everything crashing down. It all started innocently enough, with a college credit card I got just for emergencies. I told myself I'd be responsible, but I didn't really understand how quickly things could spiral. Before long, every little want, a new pair of shoes, a night out, even takeout, became an emergency. Swiping that card felt easy, almost harmless, until the statements started piling up. After graduation, I thought I was starting fresh. I landed my first real job and convinced myself I needed a car to look the part. So, I signed for a car loan, not really thinking about how much more debt I was taking on. My salary was barely enough to cover rent and groceries, let alone all my new expenses. I started using credit cards just to get by, telling myself it was temporary, that things would get better soon. But soon, making only the minimum payments became my routine. The balances grew, and so did my anxiety. Debt was piling up faster than I could keep track of. I started using one credit card to pay off another, and even took out personal loans just to keep my head above water. It felt like I was running on a treadmill that never stopped. The total amount I owed was a terrifying 6-figure number. I couldn't even bring myself to say it out loud. I avoided looking at my bank statements, hoping if I ignored it, it might go away. I felt completely ashamed and isolated. My friends seemed to be thriving, traveling, buying homes, celebrating milestones, while I was dodging calls from debt collectors and making excuses to avoid social events. The stress took over my life. I had constant headaches, sleepless nights, and a never-ending sense of worry that followed me everywhere. I was always tired, always anxious. My secret debt controlled everything I did. I hid bills in drawers, avoided checking my mail, and lived in fear that someone would find out just how bad things really were. I saw no way out, just endless treading water with no land in sight. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and honestly, I felt like I was drowning. One Saturday, desperate to escape the four walls of my tiny apartment and the endless loop of anxious thoughts about money, I grabbed my coat and headed out. The weight of my financial worries felt heavier than ever, and I just needed a change of scenery, even if only for an hour. I wandered into a cozy coffee shop down the street, hoping the hum of conversation and the smell of fresh coffee would help clear my mind. The place was busy, filled with people chatting, working, or just enjoying a quiet moment. As I sipped my coffee, I couldn't help but overhear a conversation at the next table. An older man was leaning in, speaking earnestly to a young woman who looked just as overwhelmed as I felt. He said, "Forget the interest rates for now. Don't let the numbers paralyze you. Just focus on your smallest balance. Attack it first, no matter what the experts say." He grabbed a napkin and started sketching out boxes, each one representing a debt. He circled the smallest one, making it stand out. "Once that smallest debt is gone," he explained, "take the money you are paying on it and add it to the next smallest. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. You need a win to get momentum." I was stunned. All the financial advice I'd ever heard was complicated, full of jargon and formulas. But this was different, simple, visual, and actually doable. "List your debts from smallest to largest," he said. "Don't worry about the interest rates for now, just the balances. Pay the minimums on everything except the smallest debt. That one gets every extra dollar you can find, no matter how small. Throw every spare cent at that one debt. Sell something, skip a coffee, pick up an extra shift, whatever it takes to knock it out." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I didn't need to have it all figured out at once. Maybe I could just start small. Maybe, just maybe, I could do this. I could win. One small debt at a time, one step at a time. The idea of crossing off a debt, no matter how small, suddenly felt like a real victory. It was a way forward, a plan I could actually follow. That napkin trick stuck with me. It was more than just a drawing. It was the first step toward believing I could change my story. That night, I faced my fear. I dumped the mountain of mail onto my table and opened every envelope. The numbers were worse than I thought, but I made a list of every debt. 7 debts in total, the sum sickening. But I focused on the smallest, a $250 medical bill. I'd pay minimums on the rest, but every extra penny would go to that bill. It felt strange to ignore higher interest debts, but I needed a win. My problem wasn't math, it was motivation. I needed to prove to myself I could make progress. I was ready to try the snowball. One small target, one first step. I was done hiding. The next day, I got to work. I cut subscriptions, brewed coffee at home, packed lunches, and sold unused stuff online. By month's end, I'd scraped together enough to pay off the $250 medical bill. I logged in, hit submit payment, and saw my first zero balance. Relief and pride washed over me. For the first time, I felt a bit of control. I crossed that debt off my list with a thick marker. 1 down, 6 to go. The snowball was rolling. The napkin trick worked. I had proof I could do this. Momentum was building. Now the real magic began. The $25 I'd paid monthly on the medical bill went to my next target, an $800 store card. With my new frugal habits, I threw over $300 a month at it. In less than 3 months, that card was gone. I crossed it off my list and aimed my growing snowball at a $2,000 personal loan. Each debt I paid off made the next one easier. My payments grew. My motivation soared. It felt like leveling up in a game. I was fighting back and winning. The mountain didn't seem so high anymore. And then, life threw a curveball. My car's transmission failed. The $1,500 repair threatened to undo my progress. My emergency fund only had $400. Old me would have reached for a credit card, but I'd changed. I used my savings and negotiated a payment plan with the mechanic. My debt payoff slowed, but I didn't quit. I kept paying minimums and put whatever I could toward my target. It was tough, but I didn't add new debt. That was a victory. I realized setbacks didn't have to mean failure. I was stronger than before. I kept going. After the car repair, I attacked my debts with new determination. My snowball was huge now, over $700 a month. I paid off my car loan in under a year. I picked up freelance work, sold my TV, and cut every expense I could. Friends noticed the change. Some supported me, others didn't get it. Finally, only my student loan remained. My monthly payment was now $1,200. I watched the balance drop, $15,000, $13,800, $12,600. Each month, I updated my spreadsheet, addicted to the progress. The finish line was in sight. The fear was gone, replaced by anticipation. The monster was cornered. I was ready for the final blow. The day I made my final student loan payment, I just stared at the zero balance. Years of debt gone. I felt light, free, and finally at peace. The anxiety that haunted me vanished. Now, my money is mine. I'm building an emergency fund, investing, and saving for a home. I live simply by choice, not necessity. I can enjoy life without guilt. My paycheck is my own. I am in control. If you feel hopeless, please listen. There is a way out. You don't need a finance degree or a miracle. You just need a plan and the courage to start. The debt snowball gave me hope and quick wins. Your freedom is waiting, one small step at a time.